how crazy this things are, how things are. It's it's just frustrating. I mean, it's just frustrating beyond no comprehension. And I look at this Supreme Court case, this Supreme Court justice, and the potential that we could end up seeing the end of everything that we hold dear. And it's just, you ever have one of those days? And this started for me, right from the start. Just really very frustrating. I guess we got Scott on the line. Scott, thanks for chiming back.
Trump is just such a pain, sometimes, and it's his fault. So I wouldn't worry about it.
It's all Trump's fault. Look, maybe again, you come back to net neutrality. Let's throw that out there, because who knows how much of that is. So let's bang through this, because this is important and I want to get through it. I look at what Trump's doing over there, and you're absolutely right. We're promoting his golf course, we're promoting his enterprises, and there's almost no shame in it whatsoever.
Yeah, and that's the problem. Is if he had shame, he would have resigned by now, but he doesn't, and so it's not even a double standard. I think that it's just sickening, and the thing that people need to be reminded of right now more than ever is the fact that we are still united in America. Most of us do not support this guy. Most of us did not vote for this guy. This is not who we are, and he does not represent the United States of America. He is obviously the sitting president, and we do need to recognize that and face the fact that we were tricked as Americans by Russians with propaganda. And once we face that cancer that spread from the 2016 election, once we make it illegal for outside entities and outside forces to harass and attack American citizens and also attack our election process, then we can start fighting back for real. Until then, all we have is the resistance, and that's it. And what the great thing about that is it mostly represents more than half the country now. But people need to recognize the one thing that matters is if we don't vote, if you don't get out and vote, if you don't get up off your butt and do something every single day, if you don't push hard, if you don't push a little bit harder before you go to sleep at night, if you don't push a little bit harder when you wake up in the morning, if you don't do that, if you don't spend every waking moment you can to fight for our democracy, we will lose it and people are going to die. That's the bottom line here. They're going to take away our health care, okay? They're going to kill these refugees that they're torturing in these camps. And based on my podcast, the two new episodes that are on it, there's a witness who exposed the fact that they are torturing these children. They are torturing them physically, mentally, and one of the sickest things, and this is something I can't stress enough, is something called the cold room. And if you cause trouble, I'm going to throw you in the cold room. And it's something that sends chills down my spine when it's a room that's 50 or 55 degrees and it's cold because they say it doesn't spread disease. This is, if you're talking about, is it going to compare to the Holocaust? We're there. We are there. That's where we're at. The only thing left is people dying. And it's going to involve Americans. It's going to involve these refugees. And it's just going to hit like dominoes. There's no sense to what he's doing right now. There's nothing that he's doing that's helping America at all. And everyone should be terrified. And if you're not terrified, then you're asleep and you need to wake up.
Yeah.
And that is the key. Right. And that's the thing is, I want to be as accepting to Republican members of Congress who turn on Trump eventually. I don't care if it's, 2 months before the election and it's because of the election, but it's got to happen now. And the only way we're going to do that is we need to band together and do everything in our power to control our spending, to control what we're doing with our money, what we're doing with our time, and make sure that we hold each other accountable, because we have to make sure that we keep this democracy. We will absolutely lose it. Absolutely. 100% for sure. This is the red alert. Today was a prime example with the Strzok hearing. That was nonsense. Think about what it is. Think about what today was. Think about what exactly they were doing today. The only point of this hearing, was not to investigate anything. It was to take this hearing and use it as propaganda to end the Mueller probe, you know?
Absolutely. This was about headlines. This was about grandstanding, and this was about, attacking this guy and creating the narrative that somehow that, it wasn't the Russians, Scott. It was actually the FBI who they were trying to throw it not to Donald, but to Hillary, but they lost.
Man, it twists my brain in half, because and that's intentional, obviously, but it's just like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, you're not making any sense, and they know that. But they're getting frustrated, but there is no point. Because if you ask them why about anything, why are you detaining these refugees and locking them in cages and separating the families? And the answer is so we can torture them so that when they go back home, they know better never to come back. And again, I cannot stress enough the fact that people are going to die, and that is just a fact. Because if they take away the health care, they take away funding for things, if they take away, again, there's going to be epidemics, outbreaks, I would assume. We need to be very focused in on the fact that this is not a cartoon. This is not a game, Rick, and it's real life. This is happening, and we need to acknowledge the fact that, Hitler 2.0 is here. And it is time for us to compare him to Hitler, because that's what he is, period. And I know that sometimes is hyperbole, but everything he's doing leads up to that. And the only thing left that he has to do is mass arrest and killing people. That's the only, and people don't think he'll do it. He will. And Republicans will accept it. If they were willing to do that today to hurt our democracy and look that ridiculous, then what wouldn't they do, Rick? What wouldn't they do? Nothing.
Now, are you surprised that, some of the reports that came out and some of the audio that the people working there are actually, are allowing this to happen? I mean, I question our humanity. I mean, I heard some of the people, working in these places, saying, oh, it sounds like a choir in here without a conductor and like mocking that. I don't know how you do that. I'm sorry. I'm just following orders. It's just my job. Not flying. We learned that during the Nazi era. It doesn't fly in my estimation.
No, it doesn't. And one of the things that I would say is that they're hiring sex offenders. They're hiring pedophiles. For these places. They're hiring part-time contractor workers who are unqualified, who will say things like, if you need medical treatment, which every single person who enters that ICE facility needs medical treatment, 100%. Every single one when they get in there, and none of them get it. And what they'll do is they say, if you complain, if you cause trouble, then you're never going to see your kids again. I promise you that. And that, so like how brutal they're being is by choice, and following these orders is by choice. They don't have to work there. They don't have to do this job, and they don't have to do it that way. They can have compassion. They don't have to starve these kids. They don't have to not feed them water. They don't have to walk by them while they're laying down on mats with tinfoil blankets and kick their feet every hour to do sleep deprivation torture. Like, you don't need to do that, but they're doing it because they're not trained, and there's a lot of them that are just monsters, and they are part of it. I don't know if they're enjoying it or if they're just getting used to it, but this can never be normalized, because when it comes down to it, our allies will leave us and our country will be destroyed. And that is a fact. There is no doubt. Okay? If we partner with Russia and North Korea, they will destroy us, and Trump will let them.
I listened to this, and it's one of those things. I remember, back when I was in high school, reading some of the books about the Nazi era, and it can't happen here and that kind of stuff. And I remember thinking, how could you do this? How could you allow yourself to dehumanize someone, to kick a child every hour to make sure that they're awake, or to keep them awake, or put them in rooms, or do anything? There was a baby that they had for weeks, lice infested. It hadn't been bathed, and you go, how can you do that to any living thing? And look, I don't know how you do it.
And think about it like this, Rick. People don't want to believe that that we were tricked by Russia, that we were outsmarted by Russia. They don't want to believe that we were susceptible to this madness. They don't want to believe that they'll take all your pictures on Facebook and they'll try to take all your personal information, hack into your prescription files, and try and blackmail you. They don't want to act like there are evil people in the world. But guess what? The most evil person in the world besides Trump right now is Vladimir Putin. And can you tell me one thing that is clear that would help us if we were working with Putin? And not one person, no member of Congress has told me anything except for, well, it'd be good for, and they don't finish the sentence. They just talk about, good international relations. That is not true. Good international relations would be punishing him, would be shoving him out of Crimea. This is lunacy. And there's obviously, maybe he doesn't have blackmail on Trump. Maybe he doesn't. Maybe he's giving Trump money for this oil deal, for any oil that he gets in Crimea. Maybe he's getting a kickback like his assistant did, as a Trump organization with Manafort, and they got sued by Ukraine over that. I mean, there's a lot of different things going on right now, but I from what I see, and based on the 37,000 pieces of evidence that Mueller has on Manafort, it's clear that they are going to lay the hammer down. And if he doesn't, then it's gonna be harder work. But we can get through this. But we have to be at as the office, you're in Pennsylvania, threat level midnight. Like, that's where we're at right now. I know I've screamed about this stuff for 2 years, about Russia and everything. Forget about everything else that's happening right now and look at the country as a whole. This is not who we are, and we have the right to stand up and scream about it. And that's what we got to do. And it's not about an uprising or anything like that. It's about having a progressive, peaceful revolution in this country, because most of this country does not agree with the damn thing that they're doing. Not one thing. Yeah. Not one thing.
No, I'm with you. But here's the thing. You look at the way that they are normalizing all of this behavior, or trying to, and now this person that Trump has nominated for the Supreme Court, who doesn't believe that he should be investigated. To me, it looks like we're heading in all of the wrong directions. And this Supreme Court nominee, this is the fight for me. I look at all of the other things. Important, but it's this piece right here, because if you don't stop this Supreme Court nominee, all of that other stuff becomes legal.
Well, again, none of this would happen if Putin didn't interfere in our election and help Trump, and Trump didn't coordinate with him, and dozens of his campaign members didn't coordinate illegally with them. You know what I mean? There's a reason why there's 5 people who have pled guilty to this so far and counting. We're going to look at dozens of indictments, at least 65. And, at some point it's got to break. But I'll tell you, it's going to be hard work, and we've got to make sure we stay focused. And maybe, it's history repeating itself again, where we literally maybe don't need to go to work. Like, maybe we need to have a national strike.
I've been calling for that for a while now.
Yeah, I think it's time. Like, we're in deep trouble. We're in deep trouble, and if it keeps on going down this careen of a cartoon, like it's a belligerent, drunk Fox News pundit of a government that wants to have catchphrases and accomplish nothing except we're worrying about money and not worry about humanity, like you had said, or worry about people. Like, we are going to be devastated, and we're going to look around and say, oh, I don't understand how nobody has health care and why we have these diseases coming back from the dead and why we have these immigrants who have been killed on the border. You know what I mean? Like, eventually it's going to get worse, and I don't know why people don't understand that he is capable of killing people. And that is absolutely, he is a sociopath. As I talked to, again on my podcast, I talked to a psychologist who's gotten together with hundreds of other psychologists and psychiatrists. And I know there's a lot of talk about it and there's some jokes about it, but what he had told me is you can't fake this, you can't fake how he is. And what he's defined as psychologically is a monster. And it was a terrifying conversation with him because it really did open my eyes to the fact that he's not all right. He's not all there, and what is there is sinister and evil. And everything he's doing, even if he ping pongs, even if he guesses sometimes, everything's calculated at least a little bit. And so he's doing everything intentionally. You know, when he talks about Theresa May, well, he's in the UK, I mean, none of this stuff is going to help. You know, Russia had a chemical attack that killed this UK woman, innocent civilian, and he's trying to attack Theresa May before he meets with Putin, a meeting that if he has it, he should never come back here ever again.
Yeah.
He should not be welcome in this country ever again. They should deny him access and say, go move to Russia, because it's insane. The second he does that, that's when stuff hits the fan. The second he meets with Putin this time, that is when it's no turning back, and allies say, you know what? That's it. And I think that hopefully they band together. Hopefully they call for his resignation and say they won't trade with us, they won't work with us, they won't work with us on defense or do anything else until he's out. Because the outside pressure, I think, is the only thing that we've got left besides the American people, and that's where we come in. So I think we're going to be organizing marches every single weekend, and we're going to be organizing marches during the week as well. There's going to be different topics for each kind of march. We'll make sure that everybody's aware of everything that's going on, and there will be some fatigue now, but people need to realize that this is the time in your entire life. This is the one time in the generation where you can make a difference by marching and by speaking out as much as you possibly can. You can actually make a difference in the entire world. But we need to stick together, and we've got to be powerful and a united front. And I think we're there, but now we need to implement, you know? And I think as long as we have people like you pushing it out there and making sure that we're on the same page as the urgency and where we're at, then I think, I believe, I have hope. I've never seen this much energy. Now, a lot of it may not be positive yet, but it's going to turn into that. And we're starting to see that. You know, when people join together, they are happy and they are talking positively, and they're not ripping people down with pot shots and, again, catchphrases and calling people names. It's disgusting rhetoric. I mean, I think that, again, there's thousands of reasons he should be impeached. There's thousands of reasons he should resign. And there's, you know, he's the worst of what America is. He is the absolute worst of what America represents. And he's the cancer, and we need to remove him from office via impeachment, pushing resignation, or, you know, investigating and him getting, you know, eventually indicted or pushed out of office that way. And I think, you know, at one point, I think there's going to be an end game where he's surprised, and I'm guessing it's Mueller, or it's going to be the stories of these kids that are being tortured on the border. And again, I don't use that word lightly. It's torture. It is torture. It's crimes against humanity. And again, if we let that happen, we've lost our humanity, as you said. And if we lose our humanity, you know, there's no point in doing anything.
Yeah,
like, what are we What are we doing? You know?
No, I'm with you. But, to highlight what you said, today it came out that Trump said he wouldn't necessarily rule out the idea of stopping military exercises in the Baltic states. If Putin were to ask, and you go, really? I can't imagine how the right would have lost their mind if Barack Obama would have said that.
You know what's weak? That statement that he made. You know what's proof of weakness? Everything he's talking about Putin. He doesn't have the guts. He doesn't have the courage to stick up to Putin. And you ask why. Who cares why? That doesn't matter. The fact he's doing it is sinister and evil. There's no good part about that. There's no good reason that any of his campaigners ever. I've done over 1,000 campaigns, all 50 states plus DC, over the past 14 years on campaigns. I have never, not once, met with any foreign person ever, from any country ever. And I can guarantee you that it's the same thing with the Obama campaign and everybody who worked on it. It's not normal. It's never okay. And so when they're soliciting funds, when they're coordinating with our adversaries, they're committing treason, because in my mind, when they started a cyber war, that's war. And that is reality, because it's hurting us, and it's via the means that we take for granted, which is that online. And we have to realize that everything that happens online affects real life. Yeah. And that's what's happened with what we do. And so we just need to be as aware and on high alert, and we've got to outwork them. And I promise you that I'm going to do everything I can to make sure that we push this through the finish line and work as if we're losing the entire time. I don't care if polls show us 50 points up. I'm going to work like we're behind, and I'm going to travel the country and push these campaigns as much as I can. And I know other people are going to do the same, but it really amounts to showing up. If we don't show up, we all lose.
Absolutely. And that's the message. Out of all of this, that is the message. Wake up, show up, stand up, speak out, take to the streets, all of that. And it's, if you want to save the country, this is the way we go. Scott, I appreciate the time and the thoughts and the passion. We're with you 100%, and keep up the great fight.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate your efforts, and I appreciate you being a guide for me into learning how to talk in public over the past few years, and present my case to the American people, especially with the Russia scandal. You've been an inspiration to me, and I just want you to keep on going, because again, without people like you, none of this is possible.
Thanks, Scott.
None of this.
Thanks so much. Good stuff. Thanks so much, Scott. Quick break. Right back.
Most important issues of the day. This is the Rick Smith Show. The most important issues of the day. This is the Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. Mind just reeling over Brexit will be Brexit. Wow. What philosophy, what... Jeez, oh man. Just is amazing. Absolutely amazing. The entire foreign trip, just so far, pure gold. Anyway, we're here to share some thoughts. Our good friend Bob Ney, Talk Media News. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Oh, thank you, Rick.
Did you see the question about what message Trump was going to bring about Brexit? And he rambled for a couple of minutes and never really got anywhere. The closest he got to answering the question is, well, Brexit will be Brexit.
Right. Kind of simplified that one, I think.
and Scotland, he's got some tremendous property in Scotland. His mother was from Scotland.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, I did not follow that story. Is he in Scotland?
No, I guess he was in the UK, and he was being questioned.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Or he was at NATO, and he was being questioned about what message he was going to bring to the UK on the Brexit issue, and it was wow. I mean, that's kind of the. I watched it twice just because it was like, could anyone have any less information and have claimed to have read about it? I mean, it's like if you were to read a story about anything and then told me about something completely outside of the story and said you knew everything about the story.
Mm-hmm.
Just
well, he's not known for details, but he will be treated fairly good. I mean, the protesters will be there in the United Kingdom, but the government will treat him well.
Most certainly. I mean, they're not gonna do to him what he's doing to them.
Right, and they also, they've got this controversy now with Brexit, and I just think they want to go over other issues. I really don't think they're so engaged of what's going on with NATO. You know.
No, of course. I mean, they've got their problems, but I don't know how this guy can help them.
Well, I think it's not so much what he can do to help them as him getting out of there without them getting in a great big argument, I think.
Okay, I can see that. So far, what do you have you been following what went on at NATO? Did you like the, hey, you know, everyone loves us and we're tremendous and all of the, the not quite sure what was agreed to and not quite sure what was truth or what actually happened. Are we okay with that?
Well, look, his purpose of NATO was to say that the United States is not treated fairly. They owe us money. They're not paying their fair share. That was his message of NATO. Now, that was on one side of it, and then the other side was glad-handing, picture-taking, etc. I mean, it was politically a schizophrenia event. It really was. And the money issue's been out there for a long time with a lot of people.
Sure.
But, he brought it into an aggressive way. Of course, they probably will yield to some of that. I think we have to remember something. Dealing with European politicians, which I have done in my lifetime at the European Union in Strasbourg, Europeans tend to be like 6 times more chill than an American political figure in general. They really do. And they have less controversy to themselves. So things that he's doing over there probably couldn't be done here or maybe in other parts of the world. But in Europe, it's like, okay, well, there'll be another president. We'll keep moving on. And I think that's the kind of the chill European. Even Merkel, after everything that was said, she just said, well, she believed, she grew up in the East and she believes in freedom. So, I mean, just kind of their attitude over there.
Yeah, well,
more chill.
No, you're right, but you look at Merkel and all of the attack against Germany, and to have her sit there and just kind of give a very blasé, kind of middle of the road statement without going, "Screw you, Donald." I struggle with that. I mean, I would want to reach across the table and smack him.
Well, yeah, and that's what I was. I was predicting this type of reaction before this whole thing started. The Europeans' goal is just to not get in a great big argument with him. Except for the mayor of London, who's going to do the balloon and stuff. But beyond that, that's their goal, and that's sort of how they function. So, because somebody today on radio, Rick, said, well, Merkel must have not got the translation correct. I'm like, no, she got the translation correct. That's her style. Yeah. That's their style, the European style.
Yeah, why fight a fight?
Over here, it'd be knives drawn,
Yeah. But I look at it, I'm going, I couldn't do it. I know I couldn't do it. I would reach across the table, or at least want to. Let's move on. Did you see the big hearing today? The FBI guy, Gohmert, going after him. Yeah. You look in your wife's eyes. Is it too far, Bob, to ask a witness, do you look in your wife's eyes when you're cheating on her? I mean, is that
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Is that a bit too far?
Well, I think he stretched. Look, what Gohmert's trying to say is, well, if you lied to your wife, then, you're lying to us today. Well, my goodness, members of Congress, if they ever get into their lying, did they ever lie and are they lying today? There'd be a lot of guilt marks, G's on their forehead.
Yeah.
So I didn't think it related. I think there's a couple of things, he's angry. The agent is his demeanor, I think, kind of showed that. I thought Gowdy's questioning, didn't bring in any personal things. Obviously, Louis Gohmert brought in the most personal thing of all. You lied to your wife, and are you lying here? And again, The two do not relate. Now, look, I think the FBI has got a lot of dirty hands all over the place for a lot of reasons, including Comey, how he handled the investigation, how he brought something up right before the election with Anthony Weiner, which you're not supposed to do that to influence an election. And then, I think internally there was a lot of things going on. McCabe actually helped Trump. You can just look at this whole thing. This agent, let's face it, he was trying to look like a big guy in front of his girlfriend. That's what he was doing.
Yep.
But he shouldn't have done it. Just shouldn't have done it. When you're an agent and you're in the government and you're going to work on an investigation, you got to keep it as above board as humanly possible. I don't think the hearing today served any purpose for anything. They had a hearing in the Senate, but whatever the Senate does, the House has to do.
No, I think the hearing today did its purpose. It got the right-wing talking heads something to blather about. It got this FBI agent looking guilty. It put that back in people's head that, he was going to rig the election. I'm going, he's one FBI agent. It's not the entire agency. It's one guy.
I don't think it served a public policy purpose.
No, of course not. But
they did a hearing in the Senate. The Senate and House love to have hearings on everything.
Sure,
they love to.
It's good for headlines.
That's what they do.
Yeah, and this was good for headlines. But you've been a part of these things before.
Sure.
Was this out of bounds even for the past, or is this par for the course?
You mean the Gohmert?
Yeah.
I thought Gohmert went over the line. Okay, the guy cheated on his wife. I don't know their relationship. I think they're together. They've obviously, he's admitted it and things like that. I don't think it has any bearing on whether he's telling the truth today. People do lie over the course of their lives. It doesn't mean they're lying today. So that's like saying, for example, that, Newt Gingrich is never, ever valued again to ever have a comment on anything to do with a family because, he cheated on his wife. And,
I actually agree with that.
Things. Yeah. You're terrible.
Because it was 3 times. It wasn't just once.
Okay, twice maybe. But the thing, maybe it was 3. But the thing is that, people do things. And so, again, I thought that one was the, over the top thing. Yeah. One of the congresswomen yelled, "Are you off your med?"
And again, a question that I think was valid, given the behavior that we saw out of a sitting congressman. I guess maybe maybe just, I'm older and, I used to have, and I still, have some respect for the office. And I think that the office is worthy of respect, whether you're a congressman or a senator or the president. I still think you have to have some respect for the position. But you also have to be someone who is worthy of that respect. And what I saw out of Gohmert and also out of Gowdy, I think they harmed the office.
Well, Gohmert's always been like that. They bring him on some of the national news because he will react in a bizarre way. He's the guy that, just remember, in the last month talked about vacating the chair of the speaker, which is ridiculous. He does these things. They're shock jocks. He's a shock congressman.
Yeah, he's the wind-up doll. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, see, there's the other thing. They score more points by not. If they would have kept Gohmert quiet, they really would have scored more points. Get the agent talking, get the agent angry, and you'll score points. You don't need to do something personal, though. Because I thought he answered it fine. The agent about his wife thing.
Yeah. We'll see how this all plays itself out. Let's move along. You say that the Republicans are having an identity crisis. What's that mean?
Well, look, for years, even when Putin was cool, there was a time Putin was cool, by the way, in the government and with everybody, and with Bush when he first got elected. He
looked into his soul.
Right. And he'd talk about Putin all the time. I've actually sat there personally and listened to Bush talk about Putin, seriously, where I wanted to get a cigarette. So, there was a time. Now, even during that time, and I'm going to speak from the Republican side because, I've been in the private meetings for years with them. Even during that time, there were people that were standing up saying, we've got to go after Russia. Got to go after Russia. What does that mean? Launch a nuke? Does that mean combat? I mean, there were people that wanted to sanction Russia when it, turned into, quote, a democracy. Of course, it's been hijacked by Putin. So there's still a lot of Republicans that are freaking out, and they're trying to, they're having the identity crisis because what do? Do they go after Trump? Some of them are speaking out publicly. Senator Thune of the Dakotas, he speaks out publicly, and a couple others. But then there's people like Senator Shelby of Alabama who's like, hey, we have to make a new start. So they do have an identity crisis because, all in all, to be a conservative, you have to be against the red, and to be against the red, you have to want to constantly do something to Russia. I don't know what that do is, but you want to do something to them. So Trump is blowing that all up for them.
Now, did you think it was weird that, Trump has been, pretty much an apologist for them for a while, but did you think it was weird that he went to NATO and complained about the pipeline?
Well, yeah. Well, for Trump, no.
Okay.
I mean, no.
Yeah, no. I wanted you to say it, not me.
Yeah, I mean, for Trump, no. I think that he says one thing, he hits Merkel, but then they're glad handing, and and he loves NATO, but he's complaining about NATO. He's branding this thing, and it's diversion. It's a diversion tactic, because what are we thinking now? Oh, Germany, they attacked us for being close, not doing enough for Russia being close to Russia, but look what they did. So now the thought's about what Germany did, not what Trump did, or not how Trump defends, or what he isn't doing, but the diversion is now, look what Germany's doing.
Yeah, it's a good diversion.
Yeah.
No, you're right. Real quick about the Supreme Court. Evidently, Joe Manchin came out and had an interesting quote, one that I should send Democrats running for the hills.
Right. On Monday, I actually Sunday night with owner of one of the radio stations down there who follows Manchin pretty closely. So I talked to him. This was prior to everything being released. I was just asking him what he thought, because he interviews Manchin, and he said everything was closed lip and Manchin would wait and see. Well, then Monday, Manchin kind of danced around a few things, but then obviously Wednesday he came out and he called Kavanaugh a quality choice. But he's also going to defer to his constituents, but he's going to listen to the testimony. Now, I live across from Wheeling, West Virginia. I've lived there all my life, right? And now I'm in Newark, Ohio, near Columbus. I know that valley and that region. At one point in time, Rick, when I was a state rep down there, you couldn't find barely an elected official Republican in the entire state of West Virginia.
Right.
Today, it is a red of the red of the red state.
That's the Obama effect.
Manchin, right. And that's where Manchin functions. So when I see Joe Manchin say it's a quality choice, I'm trying to rack my brain to figure out, unless there's something really personally horrible about Kavanaugh that we don't know, how he reverses himself and says, okay, I'm not going to pay attention to constituents, and my quality choice is not quality now. I think he's locked in. He's going to vote for it.
That sure does not make me happy.
Which if Collins doesn't support, Manchin gives the vote he needs. Now, I highly doubt Manchin wants to be the vote. You know how that runs. Well, I'm not the vote that made him. So maybe they're planning on one more. I don't know.
Or all three, the hat trick. Yeah.
Yeah. So something's going on. Maybe one of them doesn't. I don't know. But I'm just saying, how does Joe Manchin back off of this now? I don't know how he could.
Great.
I think it's done.
Not good news. Not good news. And finally, being from Columbus, did you happen to head to the establishment where Stormy Daniels was performing?
Well, I'm just going to have to tell Ellen Ratner, who I work for on air, if they keep assigning me to go to these events, I'm just going to maybe have to work another 3 or 4 years for them. I'm actually 30 miles from the Siren Strip Club, and of course, Stormy Daniels, it was well advertised she was going to be there. And then Ohio does have a law that unless your family, now this is really weird, if you're family, you can do a non-sexual touch to a stripper. If you're family.
Yep.
If you're not family, you cannot do a non-sexual touch to a stripper or a stripper to a patron.
Can you do a sexual touch?
I've always asked that. It says you can't do a non-sexual touch. and it's a law that, has been not used much, obviously, but there were 3 undercover agents in there, and she was touching people in various ways. Then they arrested her, but then they let her go but they might charge a couple other people, but they let her go because she wasn't a regular stripper there. And I guess, have to be a regular stripper to have violated the non-sexual touch law.
It sounds like they've kind of screwed this one up, because I remember back when I was a kid, when I was in high
really
school,
did.
They had Marilyn Chambers, who came to the New Era place down in downtown Cleveland, who evidently had done a couple of things with people in the audience, and there was a bunch of to do, and I got to think a lot of these laws came out of that.
Possibly, and that was in Cleveland, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I remember that. Right. And I remember the punchline was always, they got sucked into it.
Right. So that's what happened. That was a moment in the sun here in Columbus, Ohio.
There you go. Putting Columbus on the map.
That's it.
There you go, Bob. Bob, thanks so much, man.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And no more non-sexual touching. That's bizarre. Anyway, let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. For working people. Come to talk.
The Rick Smith Show.
From Riga, Latvia, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. Fears of a U.S. withdrawal from NATO prompted an emergency alliance meeting on Thursday after President Trump demanded members hit a military spending goal of 2% of GDP by year's end, well ahead of a 2024 target date.
I told people that I'd be very unhappy if they didn't up their commitments very substantially.
French President Emmanuel Macron said Trump didn't formally warn of a U.S. pullout from NATO, but some officials apparently heard that threat between the lines.
I think he behaves, frankly speaking, in an unstable way.
Kalev Stoyachescu is a research fellow at Estonia's International Center for Defense and Security and says Trump's rhetoric makes predicting NATO's fate a challenge.
It's even hard to answer now. It's floating, I would say.
At least today, Trump's spending demands were clearer than his threats.
After we're 2%, we'll start talking about going higher. I think 4% is the right number.
In the Baltic states bordering Russia, military spending is up and slated to keep increasing, a model Stoyachescu says more NATO states should follow. But for others like Germany, it could be a waste to throw vast sums at militaries not equipped to absorb it.
4% is something fantastic. Even the U.S. doesn't spend that.
A better option might be for NATO members to buy military equipment together, saving money and harmonizing assets in the process. But that's a distant concern here in Latvia, where the present fear is of a less involved United States.
We always believe in American leadership and hope that this American leadership will stay.
Yanis Garrisons is Latvia's state secretary, the most senior civilian in the country's armed forces.
We of course would like to live in the environment which is peaceful and nobody threatens us, but unfortunately we've seen different events in our eastern neighborhood, what Russia has been doing, and I somehow don't see that those things might change very quickly.
Luke Vargas, Riga, Latvia.
The proud defender of the American dream, Rick Smith. Call me the American nightmare. Call me the American dream. Call me your sovereignty. Call me anything you need.
Evidently fresh out of jail. Stormy's back on stage. Yep, she found a gentleman's club in Columbus. I don't know why they call them gentlemen's clubs. There are no gentlemen in there. The Vanity Gentlemen's Club in Columbus is where she will be, not Sirens, where she was arrested. She tweeted out today that the owners were too fearful to have her back, but thankfully she found a new venue, so her Columbus fans will not be disappointed. And no touching, and no ping pong balls. Just wow. Things have really gotten crazy when that's the news. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on just how crazy today was. Not being the worst of things. I've asked our good friend Sarah Burris to come talk with us. Sarah's a reporter over at Raw Story. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Rick Smith, how are you?
I'm good. I'm thrilled. Stormy Daniels is back on stage.
Bless her heart. And not in a condescending bless your heart, like legit bless your heart for being arrested at, I think it was really, really late at night. And this was totally, purely political.
Yep.
I mean, Michael Avenatti was spot on, and it's so ridiculous.
How many strip clubs have 3 federal agents staking the place out?
Right? I mean, who does that? Come on, man.
Come on, man.
It's
What's the sense of having freedom if you've got the man looking over your shoulder at the strip club?
I know. There's the strip club. If you can't be yourself in a strip club, where can you be?
Yeah. Just crazy. But and look, that was the most positive story of the day in my view.
I know, it really.
In fact, she got out. They dropped the charges, supposedly, because evidently she's not a regular stripper there, so it doesn't apply to her, I guess, something. And now she's found a new venue, and good on her. That's America.
Yeah, that is definitely America. That's the judicial system at work.
And I wonder how you came up with that law. I mean, I don't know. It's just one of those things where you go, really? Someone actually wrote that up. Someone wrote it up and put it into law, and someone voted on it and passed it.
Oklahoma has some really weird strip club laws. And, it's just like, why? Why? Have you heard of the internet?
Do they have strip clubs in Oklahoma?
They do. I don't know where they are.
Don't frequent many of them?
No, I've never been to one. The only strip clubs I did was in college, just because I'd never been, and there was one that had a seafood bar, and I was like, awesome.
I'm sorry, I don't know that a strip club is where you go to get seafood. Just not
crab leg night.
Not going there, man.
Oh, I can eat crab legs.
Just not going to a strip club that smells like fish. Wow.
I know, and I learned about it from a guy who worked at a mortuary at the time. So there you go. Just to add to the weirdness. This is Kansas. Weird things happen in Kansas.
Wow. No wonder Oklahoma and Kansas are so screwed up.
I know, right?
Combination strip club fish joint. Yeah.
Whatever works.
Oh, wow. I guess that's going to lead right in perfectly into today's hearing where you had Louis Go Go Gohmert and the idiot from South Carolina. And what a show. I mean, it was like Fox News only with congressmen.
It was. And when it finally, I think it was after the second break, I told my editor, I was like, God, I feel like I've run a marathon. Watching this thing break out and just the little fights, the little spats over reclaiming my time and not letting Peter Strzok answer, things like that, things where I really did want to know the real answer because I don't know all of the facts of this case. Nobody does. Most of it's classified. So anything that he can tell us, I would love to know. I would love to hear. And after they spent 11 hours with him behind closed doors, with people who have a clearance level, I want to know that stuff. I'm fascinated by it. And I didn't know about his backstory. I didn't know about the people that he had found, the case that he worked on that he actually won a medal for, with the people who, the Russian agents, the Russian spies that inspired the TV show The Americans. That was on Rachel Maddow last night, and I had no idea. I mean, in 2010, I was working on a campaign, which was, not the best year for Democrats, so I was a little busy. But, that just blew me away whenever I was watching it. And
they basically boated him. I mean, he's a traitor now. He's not a hero. He's a traitor. I got to tell you, one of my favorite bits was by the Arizona Republican. Gosser, I think his name is. Who I guess is a dentist turned expert in body language, and I can tell you're lying.
Right, and that was the same thing that I feel like Louis Gohmert was talking about. They were both saying kind of the same things about, I know that he's lying, and I bet he could pass a polygraph anyway. And that's when Bonnie Watson Coleman jumped in and was like, dude, Like you're talking about facts, not in evidence. If you have some proof that he's lying, feel free to present it. Instead, let's pull this from the record.
Well, I mean, they wanted to throw it out there. This wasn't really about gaining any knowledge. This wasn't about gathering information or having even a reasonable hearing. This was about feeding the knuckle dragging, mouth breathing base over at Fox News to give them something to hate this guy for. He cheated on his wife. Did you lie with her with those eyes? At that moment, I looked at that. I'm like, you should just get up and smack him right upside the top of his bald head.
That's why I really wish you could have water guns in Congress. That would be a really good moment to just be like, squirt, squirt, squirt. Because I think about it. This is really wrong.
No, it should be it should be the audience. Everybody in the audience should have them.
I just think about when I'm at my parents' house and their cat jumps up on stuff, they squirt him with a water bottle. And so I just sort of think of that with respect to members of Congress. Be like, no, bad congressmen. Squirt, squirt, squirt. Same thing.
I'd actually help fund that.
Right?
I think we could get a Kickstarter campaign started just like that.
I don't understand why the NRA wouldn't be behind it because it's sort of a gun. It's just a safe one.
Yeah, that's the problem. That's why they're not in favor of, wouldn't be in favor of it. If it had really bullets, that might be in their line of fire.
Yeah,
Just
but thought. This whole day. I could not get over how insane, how disrespectful. I guess after seeing the Benghazi hearings that went on for 6 years, I guess it makes sense that would keep going. But really, this is what they want to do to try and discredit the entire Russia investigation somehow. And you see Trump talking about this whenever he tweets, where he will say, because of this one FBI agent who really has never worked on Mueller's team, he just provided some of the evidence in the beginning, but for the last year and a couple of months, he hasn't had anything to do with this.
Right.
So, this is what they're trying to do to discredit it. And whenever I saw Trump's tweet about it, I thought, so you want to just restart this whole investigation so this goes on for 2 years? Really? Do you want to do that? Because that seems like a really bad idea.
No, it'll get him to the end of his term. But here's the thing that gets me is, and this is part of I think the plan is you need a boogeyman. You need someone to blame. And this one FBI agent is he's the most powerful guy in the FBI, and he's going to change the whole institution into some crazy right-wing leftist organization who's going to go after bringing down good, decent American Christian values, which is nuts.
It's absurd. And I think it was Hakeem Jeffries maybe who talked about how this is about an institution. America is an institution, and we have institutions that are doing important work, particularly when you talk about things like counterintelligence in the United States. So what he is doing as his job and the work that he's doing with 200 other people, that's a really important thing right now, particularly since, we don't know what the Russians are doing. And I would hope that they're out there working really hard to protect us from the election getting hacked in 2018.
No, I think they're helping the Russians to make sure that it does, because that's the only way they're going to keep the House and maybe the Senate. Well,
not the House, the FBI.
Okay. No, the Russians. The Russians are out there working to make sure that they're hacking and all of that. So good times. And so last thought on this. The takeaway, should we have a takeaway from all of this?
It's all crap. The whole thing was crap. It was a waste of time. It was a waste of taxpayer dollars. We didn't find out anything we didn't already know, and it made my Thursday exhausting.
Yeah, it would have been better if they just got in plastic bags and went out and picked up trash in the park.
Yeah, totally. That would have been a good thing. That would have helped the community. This did nothing to help the country at all.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna. So that's a suggestion. On days when they think they should have one of these hearings, just go get a plastic bag and go pick up trash in the park. Pick up cigarette butts or something.
Way better.
It's that. I wanted to get some of your thoughts on the Supreme Court nominee. Evidently not really good for ratings.
No, Trump's ratings like totally plummeted, man. I mean, for somebody who talks about how important it is to get an audience, and then I think his staff was bothered by the fact that he wanted to do the reveal at the same time that Sean Hannity's show was on, so that it would give Sean Hannity a big boost. Except that when you're covering, you know, the president making a speech, it's on every damn channel. So, I mean, you're not going to give anything extra special to Sean Hannity because CBS is breaking in and, oh my God, The Bachelor has paused. And, you know, so his ratings dropped by 7 million because everybody else saw him talking and went, where's HGTV?
And to me, that's the answer. That's how we save the country.
Yes.
Every time they turn him on, we turn him off.
Yeah, absolutely. I try not to watch him whenever I'm not working, just because it's better for my mental health in general. And if I watch HGTV, at least I can learn how to build something.
But, you know, here's the thing. The weird thing about, you know, having, you know, it be during Hannity's show and thinking about that, hasn't Hannity kind of taken an anti-Kavanaugh position, saying that, you know, he's the never Trump pick?
A little bit. I was really shocked that, I mean, they're supposed to be best friends, right? Trump and Hannity. And so the fact that Trump picked this guy and that Hannity was openly calling him, you know, the never Trump he wasn't saying he was the never Trump option. He was saying, are all you never Trumpers happy now? Are you happy with this guy?
No.
Like, he was bothered by it.
I mean, the only thing that would make me happy about him is that there's so much stuff out there that there's got to be something that you can use to, you know, to kind of, you know, stretch this out. And I'm hoping that somewhere in there, in the section about humidors, we find, you know, I don't know, something.
I want to know what he was doing during George W. Bush's administration when they were trying to send us to war for nuclear weapons that didn't exist. I want to know what his role was in that.
Yeah, did he find the WMDs in the White House in the Oval Office while Trump was looking for them and just hid them again? I don't know.
Under the cushions of the couch.
Yeah, did he hide them? You know, maybe in the drawer.
Maybe.
So I mean, I sit and I look at, you know, what happened today, and I just go, is it real? Did I just wake up from a bad dream? Is this, you know, somebody who, you know, wrote something down that, you know, was on acid or something? I don't know.
It seems like that. It seems like a really, I mean, I've never done acid, but it seems like the idea of what acid would be like after watching, like trying to watch like The Godfather while you're on acid. That's what this news week was.
And finally, Paul Manafort, evidently another 100 blank subpoenas. What do we have to, about 250 blank subpoenas now for the big trial in Virginia?
Oh man, the whole Paul Manafort story this week, that and Stormy Daniels, you know, getting justice, that was the best thing. That, you know, the fact that they moved him to like a legit prison because he complained about his fancy VIP wing of his Northern Virginia prison, that made me joyous. And the fact that we're getting closer to this actual trial. I'm curious to see what all we have on him. I know that this isn't the Mueller trial, but I think that it probably is intricately, there's something that's woven here where he was making money, you know, making some sketchy financial deals with people. And I bet it rolls into some of the stuff with what Mueller is going to uncover.
I'm hoping. I'm looking at this trial as maybe some, you know, some things will, you know, sneak its way out to see where he goes with going after Trump, because we need it quick.
Ideally before November, that'd be great.
Ideally before Kavanaugh sits on the court.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's terrifying, but at the same time, I don't understand how you could be a legitimate justice. I mean, with what McConnell did to Merrick Garland, already Neil Gorsuch is not a legitimate justice.
Agreed.
And if Donald Trump ends up to be a sketchy conspirator, even an unwitting conspirator, but a hopeful conspirator, an encouraging conspirator, who at least said to Putin, yes, thumbs up. I mean, even then, it's like you are not a legitimate justice if you are nominated by that president.
I'm right there with you. And now we've got a nominee who says, yeah, we shouldn't be investigating a president.
Which is just ridiculous.
Which is why he chose him.
Yeah.
Duh.
I mean, he knew he couldn't make the right happy. He couldn't make any of the moderates happy. So instead, he chose self-preservation, which is Donald Trump to a T.
There you go. Sarah, always great stuff. I appreciate the time, the thoughts, and all of that. Keep up the great work.
Thank you so much. Have a good weekend.
Always great to talk with our good friend Sarah Burris. She does fantastic work over at Raw Story. Check out her stuff. We'll get links out so people can take a look at her stories. Quick break. Right back. Stick around.
Me and my people are through. Me and my people are ready. Me and my people are just about due. I'm a massive airstrike on a beautiful night. Yeah, it's my song I'm singing. Somebody better start counting. We're coming out. We're coming out swinging.
Not right wing, just right. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1937. That was the day newspapers throughout the South announced the return of Ida Sledge to Tupelo, Mississippi. The ILGWU organizer had been leading unionization efforts at 3 area mills. Twice, she was driven out. Prominent businessmen invited her to leave town just days earlier, warning her not to return under the threat of violence. Earlier that spring, workers had held a sit-down strike at the Tupelo cotton mill. They demanded higher wages and shorter hours in the town's first labor action ever. The mill's stockholders responded by voting to liquidate. Sledge immediately filed charges with the NLRB against the mills for violating the Wagner Act. Now, newspapers reported a tense atmosphere in Tupelo with Sledge's return. She stated, quote, "I don't mean to cause any trouble. I intend to organize the garment workers and don't propose to be scared away." The Citizens Committee soon declared victory, claiming they had organized 1,000 workers at 5 plants into independent home unions. Sledge condemned these as company unions. By the end of the month, Democratic Representative of Mississippi John Rankin thundered. These representatives of the so-called Labor Relations Board boasted they were going to close every factory in the city before they quit, and when they got through with it, there would be no Tupelo left. The following spring, local organizer Jimmy Cox was taken outside of town and flogged by 15 men. Sledge was again threatened and driven away permanently. The mill owners finally relented in August as the NLRB trial loomed. They disbanded their company unions, reinstated fired workers with back pay, and posted notices that they would not interfere with organizing efforts. But unfortunately, the ILGWU never gained much from their organizing efforts. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com. Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Check out the website, thericksmithshow.com. So Mr. Tangerine Man over across the pond in the UK, and I love the giant blimp. I got to get one of those. We should make little ones of those. Sell them, some little ones for the kids. I think it would be fantastic. But recently I came across this great project. It's a project called Make Art Great Again. They're coming out with a book. A whole bunch of artists from across the world are paying homage to our fearless leader. I'm here to share some thoughts on why they came up with the project, what they hope to accomplish by it. I've asked Rick Braendli to come talk with us. He's one of the folks participating in the Make Art Great Again book. Rick, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you.
So where'd this come from? Why did you dream this up? Why is this important?
Well, we've been reading his tweets the last couple of years, and the idea just came up with
Braendli to come talk with us. He's one of the folks participating in the Make Art Great Again book. Rick, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you.
So where did this come from? You know, why did you dream this up? Why is this important?
Well, we've been reading his tweets the last couple of years, and the idea just came up with. We thought it would be a great collection to just see all the, let's say, absurd messages and statements that he made in one collection, because you keep forgetting the ones from last week and you just kind of shrug it off.
Hold on, whoa. You're going to put all of the absurd things he said in the last 2 years into one book? How big is this book?
Yeah, it should have multiple editions.
It'd be huge.
There was one of the toughest part of the whole project was actually selecting and stopping selecting, because whenever we kept moving on, a week later we had new messages that we thought they have to be in the book. They're just incredible. We need to include them as well. So that was actually one of the most difficult parts of the whole process, to just say, stop, okay, those are the tweets that we're going to illustrate. Those are the ones that we're going to put in the book. And if there's new ones coming, we're going to put them in a possible second edition.
Yeah, because I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about all the stupid things he's ever said and all the ridiculous nonsense that's come out of his Twitter account, especially as he's ambient tweeting. And I'm going, you know, you'd need like an Encyclopedia Britannica kind of series just to get through the first couple of months.
Absolutely. We had.
So what kind of response are you getting to the project that this Make Art a Great Again book? What kind of response are you getting?
It's throughout perfect, really good. People really like the idea. They find it funny. They find the cause a really good thing. Yeah, so far we've only received really good feedback to it.
The website maga-book.com. We'll make sure folks get to take a look at it, because you guys are doing kind of, I guess, like a Kickstarter campaign to try and get this going, right?
Exactly. Yeah, we have some funds that we've got from cultural departments, and we're doing a Kickstarter campaign just to make sure that we can finance the whole production, the print production of it, because it's going to be a physical book. It's not just going to be an ebook. It is an art project that we want to actually produce. We're going to use obviously 100% recycling paper, so it's not cheap to produce it, so we need folks to help support us on that.
Right, and this would make like a great coffee table book, you know, a good conversation starter amongst friends.
Absolutely, it's light stuff. It's not we're not trying to raise a finger. We really just want to entertain people, and we do appreciate when people start thinking about it, especially with the whole collection. It becomes kind of heavy after a couple of pages. You keep thinking, stop, hang on, is this all true? Did he really say that? And we guarantee, well, there's no need to make up any tweets. You know, you find enough crazy statements. So yeah, it's light stuff, but it also helps to start a discussion.
Now, as I understand, you're from Switzerland, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Why does this matter to you?
Well, it's a global topic. It's not just a national issue for the U.S. Americans. Once the whole climate change got involved, and we could have picked from, I think, more than 120 tweets on the topic of climate change alone that are completely absurd and that do not just influence U.S. Americans, but they do influence the whole world, including neutral Switzerland.
Now, as I understand, you've got artists from across the world. I mean, I think it's 17 countries. I think a couple here in the U.S. who are contributing to this book. So it's kind of got like a global feel to how these insane tweets affect people from all over the world. Because I think a lot of us, we look at the president, just kind of put our head down and go, oh, can this be over? Can this nightmare finally be over? But, without really thinking of, how the rest of the world views us. And I hope that you don't view the rest of us as he is typical of all the rest of us. At least I hope not.
No. I used to live in the States for a while. I have many great friends over there, and we can differentiate between the government and the people living in a country.
Yeah, I mean, but I even look at it, him and our government. There's, still there's.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that's another level, obviously. Yeah.
It's a crazy moment. So how much work has gone into this so far? Because I want people to kind of get a sense, because I'm hoping folks will go to maga-book.com and sign up, get the book, great coffee table thing. How much work has gone into this?
It's been a long process, and it's been a lot of countless night shifts on it. We've been working on it for the last half year. I would say the most difficult part, aside from picking the tweets, was actually collaborating with so many different people from different cultures, different time zones. I couldn't tell you how many hours we've spent on it so far. It's been sometimes tough too. For example, we have a hard time placing ads, because as soon as we try to promote the project, a lot of places like Facebook and Twitter, they do not allow us to do that because they claim it's a political political agenda behind it.
Right.
And since we're not based in the US, you're not allowed to promote it in those channels. I couldn't tell you how many hours. A lot, definitely a lot of hours.
Yeah, and clearly not something you're going to make a lot of money off of.
No, and it's not something we want to make money out of it. It's been a fun project. Everybody involved, all the artists, us doing the project management. It's been a real fun project. Any surplus that we're going to make, we're going to donate. We're not gonna become rich doing it.
And who do the proceeds go to if you do, when you do make money? Because look, I look at this book, and you sent me a couple of the pictures, and they're fantastic, by the way. And I hope people will take a look at them. But hopefully you will make a boatload of cash on this. What are you going to do with it if and when you do?
We're gonna donate all profits to Greenpeace and 350.org. They have two programs set up that we're going to contribute to that fight climate change.
Have they changed 350.org's name yet to like 400.org? Because haven't we gone past the 350 already?
Good question. I wouldn't know. It's up to them, I guess.
I mean, it's just, look, I'm all in favor of what they're doing. It just seems like we're screwing things up at such an alarming rate. It's bothering to me. You got any messages for our listeners? As someone who is looking at what's going on in the fishbowl here in the U.S., are you looking at us with kind of a fearful, jaundiced eye? Are you going, hey, things not so good? How do you view things from your perspective?
It's always, how do you call it? Interesting and dangerous as well. The U.S. politics influence the whole world. It's not just Americans being influenced, and the people from the U.S. have a lot of power, not just shaping the future of their own country, but shaping the future of the whole world. So I constantly watch the American evolution of politics. And if anything I would take out of this is go vote. have more people go vote.
Exactly. Get out and vote so we don't have this nightmare again. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Rick, I wish you the best with the book. I'm gonna try and get a copy. I want a copy. I hope our listeners will go to maga-book.com and figure out how they can help and get their copy. Good stuff. Good on you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Rick Braendli. Again, the website, maga-book.com. Go check that out. Go look at it right now. Highly suggested. Look, I love some of the pictures. There's a cute little video there. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show. Where working people come to talk. The year was 1850. That was the birthday of Oscar Neebe. Neebe was one of 8 men convicted of inciting violence at a workers' rally at Haymarket Square in Chicago in 1886. He was born in New York City, where he became a skilled tinsmith. He moved to Chicago in 1877, where he worked at the Adams Westlake Manufacturing Company. He was fired and blacklisted when he tried to organize his fellow workers. This, however, did not stop his organizing efforts. years. Oscar founded his own business, the Acme Yeast Company, and turned his attention to organizing brewery workers. He was active in the Chicago Central Labor Union. By 1886, the labor movement was growing in power and action in Chicago. On May 1st, thousands took to the streets in strikes and demonstrations for the 8-hour workday. 3 days later, a bomb was thrown by an unknown assailant at a workers' rally protesting police violence against demonstrators. No one knows to this present day who threw the bomb. 8 men were tried and convicted for the crime. Oscar Neebe was sentenced to 15 years in prison in Joliet, Illinois. 4 of his fellow accused were executed by the hangman's rope. After 6 years in prison, Neebe was pardoned by Illinois Governor John Peter Altgeld. His first wife died shortly after the trial. It is said she died of a broken heart. At his trial, Neebe wrote, quote, "I have been in the labor movement since 1875. I have seen how the police have trodden on the Constitution of this country and crushed the labor organizations. I am sorry I am not to be hung with the rest of the men." For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at laborhistoryin2.
Voter ID, which is going to allow Governor Romney to win the state of Pennsylvania. Done.
Taking care of business every day. Taking care of business every way. I've been taking care of business. It's alright. Taking care of business and working.
Yes, good old Mike Turzai. I'll tell you, that little tidbit never grows old. Because it's them being honest. And I love the fact that Republicans feel that they can be honest occasionally. That the goal of their schemes, be it, the voter ID thing, be it the drawing of maps, be it, down the list, is all about, their guy winning. At least they can be honest about it. And this is where, Obama was right. If they're going to steal elections, we've got to overwhelmingly get out and vote. And have more votes than they can steal. Just seems to be simple logic. And as I've been saying, I love the marches. I love people in the streets. I love it. I think it's great. But the most important march, make sure you have it on the calendar, is November 6th, that we march ourselves right to the polls. And here to talk about how we get more people to the polls, how we increase voter participation, because here in the U.S., fairly pathetic. I've asked Liz Kennedy to come talk with us. She's Senior Director of Democracy and Government Reform at the Center for American Progress. Liz, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me, Rick.
So, you heard Mike Turzai there, Speaker of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, say, look, you know what? We passed this voter ID law and it's going to get Romney elected. At least they're honest, right?
Well, it's really unfortunate that the question of creating elections that are free, fair, accessible, and secure has been manipulated to partisan advantage in any way, shape, or form. We, of course, have seen just really unfortunate voter suppression measures like strict photo ID be implemented in a certain set of states. Those clearly have discriminatory impacts on communities of color, young people, low-income people, even older people. For example, those who no longer drive frequently don't have the kind of strict ID that is now required instead of, what used to be allowed, which is like a utility bill. Still, I think the point is, and the point of the report that we released this week, is that we need to start changing the conversation to talk about all of the many pro-voter policies, the affirmative agenda to create free, fair, accessible, and secure elections where every eligible American is encouraged and able to vote. So I think that's the important steps that we can now take to really focus on how we have these common sense policies to orient our election system to really encourage eligible Americans to show up, exercise their power as voters, and do their civic duty, to participate in determining our government.
Yeah, I mean, I've always said if you don't vote, you can't complain. No complaining if you don't want to hear it. And one of the things that I've always said, and when I was 18, I was, by matter of law, I had to go to the post office and I had to sign up for selective service. it was always curious to me that while they were making me sign up to potentially go off and fight in the military and potentially die, that they didn't hand me a voter registration card and said, hey, you might want to have some say in whether that happens.
That's exactly right. I've always thought, if they could find my brother for the selective service when he turns 18, we should absolutely be doing that kind of affirmative voter registration. And that policy of automatic voter registration, where when the state, in this case, through the driver's license bureau or, some of the social service agencies, the Obamacare, the health exchanges, when the state already has the information to determine that you are eligible to vote of age, your residence, your citizenship status, then they will just use that information to add you to the voting rolls, still giving folks the opportunity to opt out, of course. And then it's still, of course, up to and everybody's individual responsibility to actually cast that ballot. But since it is a prerequisite for people to be registered to vote, and since the states in so many instances already know the information that they need to determine a voter's eligibility, there's been a breakthrough in the last few years. Oregon was the first state to adopt automatic voter registration. And actually just today, the Massachusetts Senate passed the automatic voter registration bill, which would make it the 14th state in just the last few years. And these are states that are, red states, blue states. This totally has bipartisan support. The Republican governor of Illinois signs the bill over there. West Virginia has taken steps for automatic voter registration. And the Center for American Progress did research showing that if every state implemented Oregon's model of automatic voter registration, more than 22 million registered voters could be added to the state's voter rolls in just the first year. And when we looked at how many folks who were added to the Oregon voter rolls through automatic voter registration actually turned out to vote, it was about 40%, which is lower than folks who registered themselves, but which is still huge gains. There were, nearly 100,000 new voters in Oregon just coming through the AVR system. We looked nationwide. One could expect nearly 8 million more voters if every state had this kind of automatic voter registration system. And that's just huge progress. And we really need to take advantage of these policies and practices that can help us build a pro-voter system, because right now we have a real problem with low voter participation in the country. 92 million eligible Americans did not vote in the 2016 presidential elections, and a staggering 143 million eligible Americans didn't vote in the 2014 midterm elections. Now, surely this November, there's so much energy that we're going to do a little bit better than that, but we've got to do a lot better than that. As you say, there are just a lot of people who are impacted by the policies of our government. That would be all of us.
Yep.
But way too many people, and again, particularly folks that are low income, 20-point gap existing between registration rates with Americans that are making less than $25,000 a year versus individuals making $100,000 a year. People with a college degree twice as likely to vote in 2016 compared to those who attended high school but did not graduate. And the point is, if we want government policies to reflect the preferences of all of us and the input of all of us, then all of us have to show up at the polls.
No, I'm right there with you, but I get a lot of excuses, and I know people who, for one reason or another, have decided that they are not going to vote, whether they think their vote doesn't matter, or my favorite is I'll get called for jury duty. There's a whole bunch of nonsense out there, and I think a lot of it is to keep us away from the polls, because there are some politicians who their ideas aren't all that popular with the masses, yet they're, I go back to the Paul Weyrich quote, we don't want everybody to vote. We want our people to turn out because our leverage goes up when the voting populace goes down. And that right there to me is part of the key of what we've seen over the last several years.
Well, and that's one reason, actually, that our report looks at pro-voter policies like streamlining voter registration with automatic voter registration, same-day voter registration, online voter registration, and pre-registering 16 and 17-year-olds. And we look at how we need to be making voting more convenient to people with in-person early voting that not every state has. Pennsylvania apparently does not yet have early voting. No excuse absentee voting is a really standard way that just kind of takes into account people's busy lives and travel schedules or what have you. And then some states have been working towards systems that allow folks to just vote at home, where every registered voter is mailed a ballot that they can then take their time to review and fill out at home and then, drop off. We recommend the Colorado model that has vote centers. But there's also in our report, we really discuss the importance of strengthening civics education in schools.
Yes.
So that people don't feel kind of mystified and alienated from the process. We really need to, and then this is the sixth category that we discuss and look at the data on the impact of these steps. We look at investing in integrated voter engagement and really grassroots voter outreach. Because as you say, people may not really see the link between them individually taking the time in their day and then the larger, questions of how things are or aren't working in government. So we really need to invest in people's understanding that we have power over government, that government is ours through our elected representatives to, determine what direction we're all gonna move in. And actually one of the best examples of really having voters connect their own power with the direction that they want to see society take, we've seen that when voters understand the role that they can really play when everyone turns out to vote, they are able to elect local, state, and national leaders who are responsive to and reflective of the communities they serve. So just, in November of last year in Philadelphia, voters were able to translate their desire for criminal justice reform by electing a vocal critic of mass incarceration and racial bias in the criminal justice system as their city's district attorney.
Yeah, I remember that. And again, it was one of those moments where I think it shocked people that, you talk about things locally and people come out for you. But, one of the things I want to go back to, and it's the strengthening civics education. I remember taking government in high school, years and years and years ago. And I still remember some of those lessons that, the teachers, pointed out. And I think we've lost some of that. I mean, I like the idea that we're going to, try and get more voter participation by, doing some outreach and doing some stuff. But, there's part of me that goes, do we need to do outreach? It should come from within. I mean, I vote every election since, forever. Because, it was instilled in me. This is what you do. We take our kids to vote with us because hopefully when they become voting age, they do this. To me, it seems like almost a culture that you have to say, we're participating in a democracy of the people, for the people, by the people, and the people being me and us. I mean, do we need all these other things? I mean, I struggle with, a lot of the, if we made it easier. No, I'll jump through hurdles if I have to. And I know most people don't do that, but, I kind of struggle with, people not wanting and not being passionate about it.
Well, I think that first of all, there are a lot of different circumstances that people are dealing with. And I, was raised going to the polls with my parents and, I take my son to vote with me. So there's certainly and he's still, very short. He's a small one. So there are ways that we pass these things down as civic traditions in our families. But the point is that we are all political equals and we need to be building our voter systems so that we are removing barriers to registration, so that we are just making sure that we're streamlining, that we're doing what we can to build a pro-voter system. And then, of course, the very idea of public education in the beginning when it was set up, in the U.S. was really to help inculcate and educate citizens around, to help develop a wonderful society in a democratic republic. And I think that as we've moved away from having more well-rounded public education systems with, the arts and what have you, it's wonderful, all of the focus on, science and math and STEM, but the new thing is to really make civics the next step. So to take advantage of people's understanding and when people are really thinking about what the roles they individually can play, they should have this kind of civics education offered as part of developing a just well-educated citizenry. And I'll just let you know, we looked at some of the impact that some of these civics education programs can have. In one example, a study of Kids Voting USA in Kansas found that voter participation was 2.1% higher for both 18-year-olds and their parents in Kansas counties that incorporated kids voting in school curricula.
That's great.
So,
I mean, yeah, but here's the thing. When I was in high school, it was a mandatory thing. You couldn't graduate without passing government. You had to take a government course. There was no way around it. And I don't know how in these 30 odd years that has gone from being an absolute hard, fast. It's just important as English or math or science to, well, maybe not.
Yeah. Well, those, I believe they have been not required in many places, but I think that there's a real effort in the last several years, particularly to revamp a focus on civics education in schools. And I think it's really all connected. Another thing that we look at is really the alienation of people from government. So there are so many people who do feel that their votes don't count, or that everything is so corrupt that, it doesn't matter if they make their voices heard anyway. Yeah. But that's the kind of thing where, the best way for people to, give up their own power is to believe that they don't have any. And we do have power, particularly right now when elections are being decided by 750 votes. One vote. In one place, it was a coin toss recently. Yeah. So there are just real, there's a real impact when suddenly people get in office that, have different backgrounds than maybe a lot of the folks who've been representing communities for a long time, or who suddenly say, we do believe in expanding Medicaid for all. And, either way, the important thing is that we all understand that our government is in our own hands, and that we do have both the power and the responsibility to determine the future that we want, even just with our own single vote. And then it's important that legislators understand that we have got to be building systems that encourage people to participate, eligible voters or eligible Americans to cast those votes. So, for example, Pennsylvania, only right now of all of the pro-voter policies that we looked at, they do have online voter registration, which is terrific. We saw that if all the states that don't have online voter registration adopted it, there could have been over 500,000 additional voters during the 2016 election. And Pennsylvania does automatically restore voting rights upon release from prison. So that is something, that's what my sheet is telling me, and that is something that is a very important tool in terms of equity in different states, is to make sure that we're all political equals. When even when people who've been convicted of felonies have served their time and paid their debts, they shouldn't suffer a civil death. They should be restored to their communities, and with that, their voting rights. But Pennsylvania really should take some pretty simple steps, even allowing for no excuse absentee voting, right, or allowing for early voting. We found that if Pennsylvania allowed for early voting, looking at how the study showed it impacts participation in other states, you could expect over 116,000 more voters in Pennsylvania. Similarly, if Pennsylvania had allowed eligible voters to register on election day through same-day registration, almost 300,000 more Pennsylvania citizens would have been able to have their voices heard at the polls.
And then maybe we wouldn't have almost super majorities in both the House and the Senate. Interesting stuff. And as I said, you want to change the world, start by changing your piece of it. Liz, I appreciate you taking some time, sharing your thoughts. I hope we put these policies into place, and I hope we move forward come November and get more people out to the polls.
Well, thanks, Rick, for paying attention. Everybody listening can go register right now with vote.org and make sure that 10 of their friends register to vote, and then later on check to make sure that their registrations are up to date. This year is not the year to stay home, November 6th, and then we can help create these pro-voter systems. So
Good stuff. Liz, thanks so much. Appreciate it. If you want to check out her report, Increasing Voter Participation in America, put up by the folks over at the Center for American Progress. We'll get a link out and make sure folks have opportunity to see that. We're going to take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Voter ID, which is...
From Riga, Latvia, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. Fears of a U.S. withdrawal from NATO prompted an emergency alliance meeting on Thursday after President Trump demanded members hit a military spending goal of 2% of GDP by year's end, well ahead of a 2024 target date.
I told people that I'd be very unhappy if they didn't up their commitments very substantially.
French President Emmanuel Macron said Trump didn't formally warn of a U.S. pullout from NATO, but some officials apparently heard that threat between the lines.
I think he behaves, frankly speaking, in an unstable way.
Kalev Stoyachescu is a research fellow at Estonia's International Center for Defense and Security and says Trump's rhetoric makes predicting NATO's fate a challenge.
It's even hard to answer now. It's floating, I would say.
At least today, Trump's spending demands were clearer than his threats.
After we're at 2%, we'll start talking about going higher. I think 4% is the right number.
In the Baltic states bordering Russia, military spending is up and slated to keep increasing, a model Stoyachescu says more NATO states should follow. But for others like Germany, it could be a waste to throw vast sums at militaries not equipped to absorb it.
4% is something fantastic. Even the U.S. doesn't spend that.
A better option might be for NATO members to buy military equipment together, saving money and harmonizing assets in the process. But that's a distant concern here in Latvia, where the present fear is of a less involved United States.
We always believe in American leadership and hope that this American leadership will stay.
Yanis Garrisons is Latvia's state secretary, the most senior civilian in the country's armed forces.
We, of course, would like to live in the environment which is peaceful and nobody threatens us, but unfortunately we've seen different events in our eastern neighborhood, what Russia has been doing, and I somehow don't see that those things might change very quickly.
Luke Vargas, Riga, Latvia.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
To this battle, take my Union gun. Gonna end this world of slavery for this war is won your fight.
My favorite tweet back at us was Sarah Burris had said that they had moved Paul Manafort to a regular prison cell from the VIP cell, where he had his own little room, wore his own clothes, his own shower, laptop, all that stuff, and then they moved him to a regular cell. He's in protective custody, of course, but as Eileen pointed out, maybe they should have a live zoo cam feed on his days in a cage for the people of the Ukraine to pay attention to. And I would argue maybe we could help solve our national debt by charging a small little fee. And I'm sure that they would pay it. I am sure that they would be thrilled to see what's happening to him. Just absolutely amazing stuff. Good news for the people of Kentucky. Second day in a row, Mitch McConnell went to have dinner or lunch or went to eat out. Second day in a row, sent packing. Evidently, he went to an Italian restaurant, had his group. A bunch of people showed up, blasting music, shouting "No justice, no peace." He ended up leaving with the party. And I guess the people at the restaurant wanted to serve Mitch, but the rest of the folks not so much. And then went to have lunch in Louisville, and nope. And this is where, look, make these people's lives uncomfortable. What they are doing should not go unnoticed, and by causing these kind of disruptions, maybe you begin to have the conversations with people around them about exactly why you're doing what you're doing and why you're holding these people accountable. Also, finally, you're talking about Kentucky. 8 former supervisors and safety officers at a Kentucky coal company that's now bankrupt. Evidently, they were falsifying air quality reports and are facing charges of fraud. And look, at the end of the day, how many people did these folks kill? They're going to be charged. They're probably going to go to jail for a little time. But how many lives did they ruin? According to some of the reports, the air quality in these mines were so bad that you could barely see the hand in front of your face because of the dust that was in there, that these people, the companies are going to police themselves. These people allowed these working conditions. This is going to be the new normal. And the thing that infuriates me is these workers put up with it. They put up with it. Just angering. Anyway, if you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com. That's where you go to get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for tuning in. What a crazy, crazy day. I look forward to tomorrow. Thanks so much. We'll see you back here tomorrow.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Together, we can make America better. Email rick@thericksmithshow.com or interact with us anytime at thericksmithshow.com. Until next time, this has been The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Its color like the tide flood beneath the lunar sway, imperial, mysterious, in amorous ray. Democracy is color.